Hi guys, welcome to day 2 of the 3 Secrets in Holiness to Marriage book study that we're doing together. Thank you for continuing to pursue holiness in marriage with us, Dan and Amber, authors of the book. And in today's reading, you are going to open up with a reflection on the Croatian wedding tradition of holding a crucifix during your wedding vows. And this is the crucifix that Dan and I, we did this tradition, and we used, this has been in your family for a long time, yeah?
Yeah, it was my grandpa's cross, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so, and we now have this cross hanging over our beds, but of our bed, just one bed.
Just one bed. We don't have 2 beds.
Well, sometimes off to the couch you go. But this crucifix is hanging over our bed, and just like you read in the reflection, we held our hands over the cross just like this when we said our vows. And the idea of embracing the cross when you speak those vows of for richer or poorer, and good times and in bad, and sickness and in health, as long as we both shall live, is we are recognizing right from the beginning that we have found our lifelong cross. We are recognizing from the beginning that marriage is not easy, that it's not always happily ever after, right? That gift of joy that comes from marriage actually comes from the sacrifice and from the difficulties that you face in your marriage. So today, if you find that your marriage isn't easy, today if you're looking one another in the eye and saying, you know what, this is hard, this is more difficult than I ever thought it could be, and some days I feel like the weight of this cross is too heavy for me to carry, we want you to know that not only is that completely normal, but that the Lord is actually giving you opportunities to walk with Him on Calvary. The Lord is inviting you to be where He is, to hold His hand, and to trudge forward towards holiness. No, every day is not supposed to be full of sorrow and sadness and sacrifice, but there will be moments of every day that are, most likely, and there will be days and weeks when you feel like marriage is a burden and marriage is hard. But today we want to talk about not running from the cross, but embracing the cross. And Dan has kind of a cool story to share with you guys on that topic.
Yeah, I wanted to actually start this video with carrying Amber in on my shoulder and just plopping her in the chair, but she wasn't game for that. I don't know why. There's something really neat about embracing the cross and then saying your vows, right? Because you're actually, especially if you've been married for a few years or just a few days, you realize the difficulty that comes, and that the reality of those vows become real with the cross. And that was...
We're happy though, guys.
We're so happy.
We want you
so
to know
happy.
that...
Oh, man. But we're both Italians, and that makes for some interesting conversations. But no, for real, though, when I was, I don't know if you know this, but Amber and I are kind of a big deal. We were on a reality TV show, God or the Girl. And as part of that show... 7 years ago? Oh, no, that was...
No, wait.
It was before we got married, and we've been married for 10 years, so it's been 11 years now.
It was on years, A&E.
Boom. And part of that journey was I carried an 80-pound cross for 22 miles. I got that. And in that journey, carrying this huge cross for such a long time, at first, the first number of hours and hours and hours, I was just thinking about the pain and how difficult it was and how long it was take. And then as the journey went on, at some point I realized that as I was carrying the cross, I was actually hugging it, right? That as Jesus carried His cross and as we carry our cross, the only way to really carry it is to hug it and to hold on to it deeply. And I remember just a really profound moment where I placed my head on the cross, and I found an intimacy with it as I carried it, where I really felt union with Christ, and just like, Lord, thank you for allowing me to physically enter into this experience of carrying a cross, but thank you for allowing me to embrace with an intimacy this struggle as you embraced it. And I think there's something beautiful about that. We talk about this tradition that you may kiss the cross, right? That there's something profound about kissing the cross, and it's about finding an intimacy with suffering, that the difficulties of life, that we can cling to the cross in a way that we find an intimacy where this is where I belong. This is where I belong here with the struggle, with Christ. And this isn't something I want to throw off, but it's something I want to hold and hold closely. And it's in those moments of suffering that we find what love is, right? We talked about in today's reflection, that scripture verse, like the cross is foolishness for those who are unbelievers. And a lot of times people would be like, well, why, if you're unhappy in marriage, or if you're struggling in marriage, or if this difficulty has arisen, why don't you just get a divorce, right? And that's like, it's foolishness to say, hey, listen, we have difficulty, and yet we're gonna embrace that difficulty, and we're gonna love one another through it. But it says, the scripture, St. Paul says, for the Christian, that we realize that in the cross is the power of God, that in that we find the power of God. And the cross is where victory comes. And if you want victory in your life, if you want victory in your marriage, if you want the full and abundant life, through the cross we find it. That's where we find love. And so I just want you to love the cross. The cross is not a burden. It's not something that God is forcing on you that you must suffer through. It's actually the joy of your life, and it's where you find true and authentic love. And if you don't have this tradition of having a cross, it's not too late. Find a crucifix, say your vows. I want to encourage you guys really deeply to kiss the cross every night with your kids before going to bed, and just pray a simple prayer. Jesus, I love you. Jesus, teach us how to love, and allow your children to grow up knowing that love is intimately connected with the cross. Any other thoughts?
No, that's great. I mean, I always have 100 million thoughts. We're trying to keep these
short,
under
to the
7
point.
minutes.
Boom.
So that's good. I know that your granny's got a crucifix in her attic. If you don't have one, get one. You need to have a crucifix in your house. We are the domestic church, and if you don't have a symbol of true love in your house, your children and you yourself, when you turn on country music or you turn on a movie at night.
I went and bought this gigantic cross for our house. Amber's a little freaked out by it. Some of the neighbors are a little freaked out by it.
That's all right.
But it's the centerpiece of our house. Why?
Because the cross is love.
Yeah, it's the centerpiece of every church. It should be the centerpiece of our home.
Everywhere you look, you're going to see false images of love. When you turn on the TV, when you turn on the radio, like I was saying, there's lots of false visions of what love is. And so we like to keep the crucifix front and center in our homes and in our hearts to remind us daily what unconditional love looks like. And if there's ever a moment when you look at Jesus and you think for one moment that you're not worthy of love, that you are too imperfect, that you are too much of a burden, the crucifix wants to remind you today that that you are worth it, that you are worth every slash of the whip, that you are worth the nails in his hand, that nothing held Jesus to the cross except his love for you. And that same love that Jesus has for each and every one of our imperfect selves, that's the love that we're called to give to one another in our imperfections, in our shortcomings. Jesus will never, ever turn his back on you. And so because of that, we vow to one another that even as ridiculous as you are sometimes,
sorry,
and even though I speak in baby talk to grown men, grown man,
so have fun.
We still love each other.
Grown men. Have fun redoing your vows tonight.
This train's going off the track.
Yeah. Whoa. Have fun. Make this awesome. All right?
8 minutes.
Boom.
Peace out.
See ya.